Hello, hello. You are joining me in my greenhouse. I felt like that worked quite well last week, from the point of view of keeping the wind noise to a minimum, but also minimising extraneous dog noise. Although I do have the door partly open at the moment because it's actually really hot in here. Sort of same as last week when I was saying I wonder how hot it gets. I still haven't got a thermometer. Andrew says there's some way I can check on my phone, or at least on his phone, what the temperature is in the greenhouse. But get down, get down. Of course, I've started talking. All the dogs now want to be in the greenhouse, so I might have to shut them out. We'll see how we get on. But yeah, it's really lovely and warm in here. So we've moved one of the outdoor chairs in here, and both Andrew and I quite regularly sit in the greenhouse and have coffee and just listen to the birds. I quite often sit here when I'm gardening just to take a little break. So yeah, once I've got all the bits organised in the greenhouse that I want to do, so I'm going to build a raised bed down one side, possibly in an L shape, just to really maximise growing space. But we're both really enjoying being able to sit in here, so there is part of me that's like, maybe we don't eat that. Oh, good Lord. Right, come on guys, out we go. Ruin a nice moment by eating a bunch of crap off the floor. But yeah, we're both enjoying sitting in here, so there's part of me that's like, maybe I need to factor in a place to put a chair, or maybe the middle section at the moment is sort of the walkway. Maybe we just sit on the walkway if and when we want to sit in the greenhouse, because ultimately the aim of the greenhouse is to maximise growing space, right? So it makes sense to put in either an L-shaped bed, or so if you roughly divide the greenhouse lengthwise into thirds, on one third I've got my potting bench and a shelf organiser. The middle third is currently a paving slab walkway, although the paving slabs are quite uneven and broken, so I'm going to take them out and replace them with gravel because I've got loads of gravel left over from when we laid the turf and we had to lift all the old gravel. With the added benefit of gravel being that it's porous, so if I'm watering and I spill water, it'll just soak into the ground. And I don't have to level it, which is an added bonus. So yeah, the slabs will come out eventually, but I'm leaving the slabs in for now because the last third is going to be a raised bed, so I'm just waiting to buy the wood for that. I've got one last calculation to make sure I've got enough wood added to the order, and then I'll check out with that. I feel like I'm spending so much money on the garden at the moment. There's part of me that wants to stagger these kind of purchases, but it is also the growing season, isn't it? So there's no point kind of waiting 6 months and then buying the wood, because then most of the growing season will be over. So anyway, so yeah, the raised bed will go in the last third, and in that I'm going to grow all the things that are more heat sensitive, so like tomatoes, chilies. I bought some cucamelons. I put in a Vital Seeds order the other day, so I saw them on Hugh Richards' YouTube, which I'll link in the show notes, the gardening permaculture YouTube. And they're a UK based seed growing business, I guess is what you'd call them, seed producer. So they grow plants and they save the seeds and then they sell the seeds basically. But because they're based in the UK, it obviously means their plants should be acclimatised for growth in the UK, albeit they're based in Devon or Cornwall, which is quite a different climate to it is to being up here in the Highlands. But I figured if you start with a UK company, that's a good place to start. And I don't have anything against the sort of bigger, your what's it like, Thompson and Morgan or whatever, or Mr. Fothergill's seed producing companies, but there's just part of me that's like, it's nice to just support a local to the UK independent business. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing how they come about. And the added benefit is that they're sorry, good girl, get off that. Sorry, just squeaking the greenhouse door open because the dog is walking on the border where I've just planted up a bunch of small plants. I'd rather she didn't trash them. But yeah, the added benefit of them is they're supposed to be what's called an F1 variety, which I think means that they will produce seeds that will also themselves be viable. So the idea is that you could save your own seed and then not need to buy seed next year, which is quite appealing, because obviously gardening is expensive, as I am finding. Although I'd say so far the majority of the cost has been wood to build things, so the compost bin and the raised bed, and then the next big order is going to be wood for the raised bed in the greenhouse. And I'm also going to do a raised bed around the outside of the greenhouse. They're going to be shorter than my epic raised bed. So my epic raised bed is 5 planks high, which makes it 72 centimetres high. And I'm going to do 2 planks high, which is about 28 centimetres high. So more of your sort of traditional height of raised bed. But the one on the outside of the greenhouse is going to act as a bit of a fence to stop the dogs getting too close to the greenhouse, so that if they're playing rough with each other or chasing a ball, they don't accidentally run through a glass panel. I think I might have mentioned that in the previous episode, but yeah, and then I'm going to do that in a sort of L shape round the side of the greenhouse, outside of the greenhouse that's sort of exposed, and then use that to plant up some of my plants that need direct sunlight, because that part of the greenhouse probably gets the most direct sun, but obviously the ones that don't need to be like physically undercover, because they will be outside of the greenhouse. And then inside, yeah, I've got my raised bed. Well, I've got 2 different types of tomato, some chilies and some cucamelons, which are apparently a type of pickle. So neither a cucumber or a melon. But Andrew quite likes a pickle, like in the type in vinegar. So I thought they might be quite fun to grow, because then I could try pickling them at the end of the season, which would be quite fun. And then also in here, I'm going to have 2 different types of basil, some parsley and some coriander. And I've also got parsley outside in the outdoor raised bed, so we'll kind of see which one does best, basically. And then lastly, I've got my fig in a pot, which actually, I think I've just answered my own question about straight or L-shaped raised bed inside the greenhouse, because I'll need to make space for my fig. So yeah, my fig will be at one end of the pathway. So there we go, solved that question. Thank you very much for helping me work my way through that stream of consciousness. But yeah, I guess this is a little kind of gardening update episode, so apologies for anyone who's not interested in that kind of content, but I suspect that's going to be a lot of my content over the next few months. I have, just as a side note deviation into sowing, I did finish my bestie bags, so I think last week I said maybe by next week I'll have finished them, and I have finished them and I posted them, and I know at least one of them has been delivered, because I've already had a thank you, which is nice. And then I'm just waiting for the other one. I think they were both delivered today. So drop. Watch this good girl. Well done. I think you guys are going to have to go back inside, aren't you? So yeah, so I was very proud of that. And if I'm honest, the fact that I was recording this podcast episode last week was kind of the motivation to get them done, because I thought I can't come on this week and be like, well, I'm still waiting on my bestie bags to be done, sort of thing. So yeah, I was quite pleased to get them done. So I'm not ruling out doing some sowing in the not too distant future, but I'm just quite enjoying gardening at the moment. Like, it's so nice to be outside, now that the weather's kind of cheered up and the sun's shining and it's blue sky and the birds are singing, and it's really lovely to be outside. Although, having said that, I only get direct sunlight in this part of the garden from sort of later in the morning, kind of 10:30, 11, through till the evening, to be fair. So it is the vast majority of the day. But because the sun is still kind of relatively low, I sort of lose it around 5:30, 6ish. So I do still have a decent period in the evening where I could continue with things like sewing. And I did actually manage to it's such a struggle for me to buy a new pattern, but no, I bought a new pattern this week. I bought the Helen's Closet new trouser pattern. Linden, I think. No, that's not right. That's her pullover pattern. I can't remember. I'm completely blanking on its name now, because I'm a professional podcaster who prepares these things in advance. But I'll pop it in the show notes. But basically, it's a trouser pattern, wide leg and barrel cut. both of which are styles I really like, so it's nice to get them both in one pattern. But it's a sort of jeans style, but without all the faff of jeans making. So it's a zippered fly, but no yoke, and no back pockets. Although if I'm honest, I'll probably add back pockets because I use back pockets a lot. No front pockets. Instead, she's got these interesting sort of side pockets that are inserted into the seams, kind of like you get on running leggings, actually. So apparently they come together very quickly, which appeals to me. And I have several bottom weight pieces of fabric that I could use for them. And I think I was saying in my sewing episode recently that I would quite like to sew myself some new trousers, because I've got probably 3 pairs of trousers that I wear basically constantly on rotation, and one of them at least is not the most flattering in terms of fit because they've got quite a long dropped crotch. So I would like to make some new trousers. So I was thinking this week might be a good time to cut out a new pattern. When I saw this Helen's Closet pattern, I was like, oh, perfect. That kind of ticks all my boxes, to be honest. But it's just that annoying, you know, when you buy a new pattern and then you've got to print it out, cut it, stick it together, and then trace the size, and cut that out. And I know it's all just part of the process, and most of the time I do enjoy it. I just put on a podcast and kind of get on with it. And especially the sort of printing and sticking part, you only have to do that once, right? And then you can trace off the size that you want and hopefully not need to print it out again. But yeah, it's just that sort of annoying, like, ugh, I can't really be bothered. I do have the worker trousers and the Morgan jeans already cut out, so I could, if I was gonna sew up a pair of jeans this week, I could just go straight to the kind of mash up between those 2 patterns that I've talked about doing, but we'll see. I might try this evening. I might print it out and sort of see how enthusiastic I'm feeling about tracing it. But yeah, back to the gardening. So apologies if you're not here for the gardening content, but yeah, I suspect there probably will be quite a lot of that over the next few months. This week I have sowed some yarrow, which apparently needs light to germinate, so you don't sow it actually into the soil, you sow it on top of the soil, so the seeds are exposed. And then I've just filled a mist bottle with water and kind of misting it down, so that they don't sort of move around when I try and water them. I've also sowed 4 winter squash, which is the, what's it called? The Desert Spirit Landrace, which I basically picked because I thought they looked pretty, which is not necessarily the best reason to grow squash, but I quite like, I know it's quite Americanized because obviously pumpkins are not really a thing over here in quite the same way as they are in America, but I do love like a decorative gourd. Who doesn't, especially if they come in different colours. So I thought it'd be fun to try growing my own that I could then obviously use to decorate the house with in the autumn time. And then allegedly this variety is also edible, so I thought obviously I could decorate with them and then ultimately cook with them as well, which would be quite satisfying. And then I bought so Lisa Comfort Jazzy Rose flowers. I followed Lisa for years when she had Sew Over It London. So I used to follow all her sewing content, and then when she had her homeware content, I think that was Lisa Comfort Home, if I remember rightly. And now she has a flower farm, so now she's a flower farmer. I just love an entrepreneurial story, you know. I love, especially a woman who sort of tries and fails and tries again and succeeds and then tries again and blah, blah, blah. I just find that quite inspiring. So anyway, Lisa Comfort a couple of years ago set herself up as a flower farmer. And this year she sold some of her sweet pea seed. So I bought a pack of 50 and I split them between me and my bestie. She was up visiting. And I sowed my first 4 today. So following Lisa on Instagram, she showed a video of her sort of starting her sweet pea seeds. So she wet some kitchen roll and then laid the seeds on the wet kitchen roll and then put more wet kitchen roll over the top and then put them in a sunny place in a little... what's the word, like Tupperware to act as a mini greenhouse. So I basically did the same. I used a freezer bag, but yeah, mine are on the kitchen window, and 5 or 6 of them have already germinated, and I only put them in there like 2 or 3 days ago. So I've sowed 4 of them. I've prepared newspaper pots because I think sweet peas don't like their roots being disturbed, if I remember rightly. So you're supposed to sort of put them in root trainers or whatever and then plant the whole thing without disturbing the roots. But the other thing you can do is newspaper pots. So I've made, I think, 12 newspaper pots, and I've got 4 of them sown. So I kind of figured I'll sow a couple every sort of few days, and then I'll have them sort of staggered, which would be quite nice. Not quite sure where I'm going to put them because obviously my my raised bed is quite tall. Sweet peas themselves grow quite tall, so I could put them in my raised bed and just give them a sort of cane wigwam to support them. But it might be nice to have them growing up the side of something, but I don't really have that opportunity. I could grow them up. I've got some fence panels I could grow them up. But one half of the garden fence panels are going to come down and be replaced in May, so I just don't want to plant anything along that border because obviously they'll just get trampled. And the other fence panels, we're sort of deciding what to do with them because they are a bit sad. They're slightly less sad than the ones that are being replaced, but they probably do need replaced in the not too distant future. I'm just hoping they can kind of limp on and maybe we do that next year. But I could plant the sweet peas at the base of them, to be fair. And then the other thing I've planted today is some sunflowers, which wasn't sort of on my planting plan. They came free with this month's edition of Gardener's World magazine. And the aforementioned Dodge fence that's being replaced maybe next year does get quite a lot of sunlight, so I've planted some along the border of that, and I thought potentially I could grow the sweet peas in amongst them. I don't know, we'll see. But I thought sunflowers might be quite fun just because, you know, it's kind of fun to grow something that's like enormous and brightly coloured, right? Appeals to your inner child. And then with the added benefit that once the seeds go over, you can obviously collect your own seed. I need to double check whether or not those seeds would be viable or not. Or you can just hang the seed heads and the birds will eat them in the autumn. So yeah, I just thought they'd be quite fun and quite summery. But essentially I have run out of compost and I've spent an absolute ton of money on compost and topsoil recently, so I could pop down to Tesco and get some more because they have quite a good deal on compost at the moment, but can't really be bothered to leave the house. I've already been out a couple of times this morning, and yeah, I'm just feeling a bit guilty about how much money I'm spending on the garden at the moment, so I was like, if I could hold off. It's silly because I can't really hold off till the end of the month because the end of the month is like the best part 2 weeks away and I've still got other things I want to plant. So it really makes no difference if I spend money on compost today or I spend money on compost next week. It's all coming out the same paycheck, you know. But yeah, I just feel a little bit guilty, so I'm holding off on that today and just doing other jobs. So my task in this late afternoon is to continue washing the greenhouse. So I washed half of it, the half that I've put gravel down on the floor and then moved the potting bench and the shelves back into place. And then my plan is to wash the other half of it, hopefully today, because the weather is nice. It's one of these tasks where you could go down an absolute rabbit hole. Like, this greenhouse clearly has not been washed in quite a long time. So there is a lot of algae, a lot of moss. And yeah, I spent quite a lot of time the other day doing the first half of it. And I'm sitting here looking at all the places that I've missed. But saying that, it's still at least 80% better than it was before, so there is part of me that's like, well, done is better than perfect, you know. And I kind of figure it's an ongoing task where if it's 80% better at the end of this growing season than it was at the start, and then I wash it again next spring, and it's 80% better again, you know, over time it's just going to get better and better, basically. There's some panes of glass that I need to replace, but I'm actually not sure how to go about doing that. I assume if I Google it, I could probably get them from a garden centre or something, or do you have to go to an actual glazier? I don't know. So yeah, but at the moment there's only, I think, 2 that need replaced, and I'm happy to just live with them for now while I kind of get to grips with gardening. And then the door is slightly broken, so it's on a rail, obviously, and it just doesn't move very smoothly, and it's only on the rail at the top, not at the bottom, So I suspect it's probably missing some wheels or something like that. I suspect it's probably supposed to be attached at the top and bottom, but I haven't really investigated that yet, so maybe once I've washed it today I'll have a look. I really want to get up on a step ladder and clear out the rail as well, because it doesn't open very easily. It sort of sticks and jumps, and I'm paranoid that it's going to fall out of the rail and then break all the glass in the door. So I really want to get up on a step ladder and like clear out the rail and WD-40 it and whatnot. But again, I guess if I Google it, I'm guessing it's missing wheels or something at the bottom. So I just need to get on and do that. And then as I'm sitting here, my fig looks like it's literally about to come into leaf, which is very exciting. So it's obviously been bare all winter, which caused me a little bit of alarm last late August when it dropped all its leaves, and I had to quickly Google, is it normal for a fig to drop its leaves? And I think it is. But yeah, it's got little new growth leaf shoots at the end of all the branches, and it's got one brand new branch that's like a good sort of 6 inches long, and it looks like it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little mini branches coming, so that's very exciting. So I think it's a brown turkey, which I think is a pretty ubiquitous garden fig, and I think from my understanding it takes 2 years to produce fruit, so it produces like baby figlets in the first year that then hang on through the winter and then turn to actual figs in the following season. And it was a baby when I got it last summer for my birthday from my mother-in-law. So it didn't produce any figlets last year. I'm hoping it might produce figlets this year, and then I might get actual figs next year. And then I think from that point onwards you can expect figs most years because you'll hopefully have both figlets and true figs on the tree at the same time, I think. And then I've also in the greenhouse got some baby mint, which I retrieved when I dug out a load of old mint from the raised bed, the original site of the raised bed, and some bits broke off that were clearly alive, so I've put them in little pots. I'm not quite sure where in the garden they're going to go. Possibly I've got a sort of bit pathway to the front door, and I'd quite like to grow sort of easy to maintain but nicely smelling things there, so like as you walk past them you could sort of brush your hand and be like, oh, scent of mint kind of thing. The problem is it's quite shaded, so I think mint does enjoy being in the sun, but my understanding is it's also quite robust, so there's part of me that's like, well, hopefully it'll do. So I had a giant piece of mint that I just needed to whack in the soil somewhere last year when we just after we'd moved in. So I just whacked it in down the side there, and it does look like it's growing, so I was thinking these little pots I might put down the side as well. And then I've got some supermarket parsley and some supermarket coriander, both of which look like it's actually doing really well, which is exciting. So once I've built the raised bed in here, they'll be going into the raised bed, and then I can hopefully create my own herbs to make, like pestos and add to salads and make sauces from. So very excited about that. So yeah, thank you for joining me on this little ramble tour of my current state of my greenhouse. I don't really have anything to report on the knitting front. I'm still working on the Barbara balaclava. I've only really done a few extra rows since we last spoke, to be honest. But yeah, I'm putting a lot of my focus in the garden at the moment, which there's a tiny part of me that feels a bit guilty about neglecting my other hobbies, but then that's the joy of hobbies, right? Seasons for knitting and seasons for sewing come and go, but you never lose the skill. So even if I spend the next 6 months focusing on my garden, like those hobbies will still be there waiting for me in the winter. The thing I feel more guilty about actually is I'm spending a lot of time in the garden and not very much time renovating my house. Arguably that needs to be done with more urgency, but we're at the point with the house renovation where we're sort of waiting on contractors to get going, so there are some little bits we could still be doing, like still a ton of wallpaper to strip and hooks to put up and things like that, but overall the biggest jobs need to be done by contractors, so yeah, there's sort of a limit to how fast we can move in the house at the moment, which I'm kind of using as an excuse / to give myself grace to focus on the garden, because I've waited basically 20 years to have a garden, so I feel like I want to enjoy this season in my life, you know. So yeah, I will leave it here. I hope wherever you are, the sun is shining. I hope you're putting sun cream on, because I have never remembered to put sun cream on a daily basis before, so I have switched to a moisturiser with SPF in it, because I always moisturise my face in the morning, but I very rarely remember to put sun cream on, and now I'm outside a lot more than I have been in my previous life. It feels more important than ever, so yes, putting on my sun cream, taking my vitamin D tablet, not drinking enough water. I almost never drink enough water, so on that note I might go in and get my water bottle, and I will speak to you next week. Alright, bye.